Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Bacon and welcome to a Zombies tier list. Call of Duty Zombies tier list, specifically for maps. Now, where did this come from? That's a great question I'm going to answer right now. So, I was bored, I saw a Zombies video, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to just do a little bit more Zombies content. That's no promise that I'm actually going to, because the last time I did this, I didn't upload it. So we'll see if I even bother uploading this, but I'm going to try my best to get through this, do all the fun stuff, and actually do a little bit more Zombies content, because I really do want to do some more Zombies content, and I just thought what better place to start than a tier list, because why on earth not? So, we're going to get straight on into it, and this also is going to be in numerical order. And also, if I scroll down here, you're going to see a lot of weird maps. These are all non-Treyarch maps. I'm not going to be doing them because I don't have enough experience in them. And overall, Treyarch is really just like the only, I guess you could say, good Zombies company. They're really the only guys that seem to be able to get it right. So, we're going to get straight on into this. These are the tiers. We got near perfect, great, good, average, lackluster, bad, and painful. And painful and near perfect are going to be special cases. They're not going to be a lot of maps in either of them. But whatever, we're going to get straight on into this. So, Nacht der Untoten, the very first map to ever be released in World at War. How does the map play? Well, there's 3 rooms, there's 3 doors, a single mystery box, and that's basically it. I mean, you do have, obviously, the Wonder Fizz machine in BO3 and BO1. You had Mule Kick and all that fun stuff. It's a very lackluster map. Which makes sense. It was the very first map ever created. There were no expectations. This is the map that started setting expectations because now the game mode was a thing. But in terms of today's standards, I feel like you got to put it in lackluster. I still don't think it's a bad map because when you launch Nacht der Untoten, you know what you're getting into. You can't say it's a painful map or a bad map because you know what you're getting into. Even if you're playing on the BO3 versions, they didn't update anything about it because they wanted it to be a faithful remaster of the map, and that's exactly what it was. So, I mean, like, that's just how it is. Nacht der Untoten is a very lackluster map. That doesn't mean it's a bad map, because it's the very first map ever made. There's nothing to really judge it on. Very same thing basically with Verrückt. The only difference between Nacht and Verrückt is that Verrückt had a moving mystery box and perks. I played Verrückt actually a little bit recently. I really do think Verrückt is better than Nacht der Untoten. In fact, I think Nacht der Untoten is the worst map in World at War. Verrückt, I would say, is an average map. Again, nothing really crazy to teach it on. Yes, innovation is a thing, obviously with the perks. That's obviously a thing with Verrückt, but it's still a very lackluster map. A very hard map as well. There's barely any space for you to do anything on it. There's one good camping strategy, but other than that, there's basically nothing. It's a very difficult map. Still very lackluster. I should also point out, for these maps, if they have a remake, typically I'm only talking about the original version of the map. I'm not doing anything with the remakes, because remakes could do something very weird. I'm talking about the original version specifically, with the exception of Shangri-La. For Shangri-La, I'm going to be talking about the Black Ops 1 version, because the World at War version was a horrible map because of the fact that there was the bug in it that had there was the bug that made there be a cap on how many zombies could spawn in a single round. So Shangri-La does get, I will be talking about the Black Ops 1 version, because the Black Ops 1 version is basically the exact same thing as the World at War version. The only difference is that the Black Ops 1 version fixed that bug. So, Shangri-La, what did it introduce? It introduced the Wunderwaffe, the very first Wonder Weapon that wasn't the ray gun. It introduced Hellhounds, so the very first boss, and it also introduced training as a strategy. It also introduced a random perk spawn, which in Shangri-La I feel like was really good. It helped. It forced you to pretty much explore the entire map. Really liked it. In terms of World at War maps, though, I don't know what it is about Shangri-La, but Shangri-La is one of my least favorite World at War maps. I said Nacht was my least favorite, and that is still a thing. None of these are bad maps, because still the expectations were incredibly low, because there was like nothing in them, and zombies was basically nothing. But Shangri-La, I would say, is a lackluster map. Yes, its innovation is really, really good, but in terms of the map itself, lackluster, just because of still very, I prefer Verrupt over it, and it's still very barren when all said and done. Then Derice. Derice is also going to be one map. I'm talking about the Black Ops 1 version because of the fact that the World at War version had a bug where if you hit yourself with the Wonder Waff, then you lose your jug. So that was a bug because it didn't even show up. But Derice has the biggest innovation of them all. First, not first, sorry. What am I talking about? The biggest innovation of them all, Pack-a-Punch. Imagine, just real quick, imagine Derice didn't exist and Pack-a-Punch was never added into the game. Imagine how much different it would be if Pack-a-Punch was not a thing. The ability to upgrade your weapons was such an awesome ability, such an awesome thing to do in pretty much any Zombies map ever, that if we didn't have it by now, it'd probably be a very boring experience, so Derice has to get points for that. In terms of the raw gameplay, it's by far the best map in the entirety of World at War. I don't think there's really anyone that would really argue that. It's just the best. Pack-a-Punch was such a huge innovation. There's a lot of iconic camping strategies. There's even a very small amount of room, but there is just enough room with which you can train if you're a fan of training over camping. Overall, great stuff, but in terms of today's standards, probably nowhere here in the top. I'm going to put it at good. It is a very, very good map, very iconic, introduced Pack-a-Punch, gave a lot of that. Next up, we have Nacht der Untoten. Nacht der Untoten is a lot of people's favorite maps, and I think it's a lot of people's favorite maps because it was their very first map they ever played, and it's a very iconic map, okay? I will give it that. But I will say this, I am a firm believer that Nacht der Untoten is the most overrated map of all time. It is incredibly overrated because people praise this map like it is the greatest map to ever exist, when in reality it's not. In reality, it was pretty much Derice in a different facility. It was pretty much Derice in a different location in the world, because look at what Derice is, okay? You have Pack-a-Punch and you have Pack-a-Punch and then you camp the rest of the game. Nacht der Untoten, you have Pack-a-Punch and then you train the rest of the game. The only thing that Nacht der Untoten did over Derice is that it introduced the Thunder Gun, which was a really cool wonder weapon, I will admit. But is that enough for me to keep it from putting it in S or A? No. Do I think it's a bad map by any means? No. Just because I say it's a overrated map does not mean it's a bad map. Overrated does not mean bad. Kino is a really, really good map. It's just there isn't enough content to keep me interested. I play Kino after around round 20. I start getting bored just because I've already started training by round 8. And if I'm starting to train by round 8, I understand it's the 5th map ever made, okay? I understand it's a 5th map. Expectations are still incredibly low. But for me to be engaged, I need something to do. And Nacht der Untoten just does not offer that in today's standards. Out of all of these maps, I would probably say Kino is the best that we've ranked thus far. But that does not mean it is a near perfect or great map, because it was the 5th map ever made. Very lackluster, bare bones. The Thunder Gun was an awesome addition. I also forgot about the Nova Crawlers, but F the Nova Crawlers. I hate the Nova Crawlers so much. It's a good map, but very, very overrated. Does not deserve to be an S or A. Next up, we have 5. 5 is a very controversial map. I very much enjoy 5. I'm doing this whole challenge by myself, where I'm trying to get round 30 on every single map. I know round 30 isn't too huge, but for a person like me who typically gets bored of zombies by the time I hit round 30 is a really big milestone for me. The only map I've gotten round 30 every map but 4, and the 4 that I haven't gotten them on are Classified, Dead of the Night, Alpha Omega, and Nacht der Untoten. Only reason being is because I don't have easy access to those maps. The only Black Ops 4 copy I have is on my PlayStation 4, and I've sort of swapped to PC gaming over PlayStation or Xbox gaming. So it's hard for me to get those maps. But that's beside the point. I don't even know why I'm talking about that. But 5. It's a good map. It's a very difficult map. I understand what they were doing. Give you a zombies map on completion of the campaign, and it was just a zombies map in the Pentagon. It didn't really bear too much story It wasn't very too story driven. It was just you play as one of 4 characters, either JFK, Fidel Castro, and I can't remember the other 2, Richard Nixon, and I cannot remember the other guy's name. But it was pretty good. Obviously, the Winter's Howl is a horrible wonder weapon. Still is to this day a very, very god-awful wonder weapon. Very difficult map. Barely any place to train, and I don't think there's a single place to camp other than the elevator. But even then, with how bad the Winter's Howl is, you are not going to be able to camp there for very long. It's like... It is what it is. The Pentagon Thief I actually really enjoyed because he didn't kill you. He was definitely annoying, but he didn't actually end up killing you. It was whatever. I enjoyed the Pentagon Thief's presence. What where I put this map? I'd say it's average. It's sort of a forgettable map if I'm being entirely honest. There isn't too much to it, but it's a fine map. Next up we have Ascension, which, like Kino, I think is a very overrated map. I am not too big a fan of Ascension. A lot of people really like this map and think it's like a top 10 map. Despite the fact that the people that say this is like a top 10 map, I feel like they understand the annoying features about it and how easy the map is, but they enjoy it just for the fact that it's a very easy map. And so there's basically, it's just a mind-boggling easy map. You can just do pretty much whatever you want. The reason I do not like Ascension is because of the Space Monkeys. They are one of the worst boss zombies in the entire game. Because it's overall, like, late game, they're not that big a worry because of the fact that, like, you have so many points to rebuy all your perks. The only one you have to worry about is Quick Revive. And if you do worry about Quick Revive, then you're perfectly fine. But early game, because they don't spawn until you get your very first perk and turn on power, so the very early game when you basically have no perks, I honestly would value Jug over Quick Revive, and but both of them are super important, so you have to go between both of them, and it's just like they waste your points, they take all your perks away early game, and it's overall just not a fun early game experience for me, and that's why I'm not a huge fan of Ascension. But I understand late game, that's not a huge worry, and that's why I'm putting Ascension into average. I didn't think it was a bad map, but just the presence of the Space Monkeys prevents me from putting it any higher. Next up, we have Call of the Dead. Call of the Dead, this is a map that I had barely played. I had constantly seen people saying that this map is one of the greatest maps of all time. I've also heard people say this is one of the worst maps of all time. I finally got a chance to play it, and I got round 30 on it. And I can very, very much say that after playing that map, that I think Call of the Dead is a fantastic map. I wouldn't say it's S, but oh my goodness, this map is great. It's the perfect blend between challenge and challenge and suspense, because it's a very challenging map. Early round is actually not that challenging at all, because the scavenger one-shots until around round 40, 50. So early rounds, you're chilling. You're chilling very early round. But once you get to that point where you're good, you have everythting set up. You're just training around in that one area of the map. I don't even know what the area of the map is called. Right next to the lighthouse. George can be a douchebag to you for all he wants. He doesn't care what you think. He'll be the douchebag, but he's so slow, very manageable boss to deal with, and overall just not that big a presence, and it's just so many things about this map. I feel like the map layout is great. It encourages you to explore the entire map because Pack-a-Punch can spawn pretty much everywhere. All the perks are all over the map, including the ones that you're going to want. It encourages exploration. I really enjoy the characters. I enjoy the atmosphere. Everything about Call of the Dead is just great in my opinion. Next up, we have Shangri-La, and Shangri-La is going to be the very first map I put in bad. I did not like Shangri-La, and there is one reason behind Shangri-La, me not liking Shangri-La. I am not a fan of maps that are basically just hard for the sake of being hard. And that to me is what Shangri-La felt like. I'm not putting Shangri-La on the painful, because I will admit the baby gun is such a fun gun to use. and I do enjoy the story of the map, but everything else about this map is very bad in my opinion. The traps are horrible. The Pack-a-Punch system, in my personal opinion, especially in co-op, is horrible because you have to synchronize so well. If you're in a public game on Shangri-La, no way on earth are you Pack-a-Punching on public match Shangri-La. It is not happening by any means necessary. Other than that, you have the boss zombies. The monkeys, which I actually kind of like the monkeys on this map because you can manipulate drops with them. I do enjoy that. They can prove to be somewhat annoying, but I think overall they're fine. The Napalm Zombies, they're manageable. They do deal a lot of damage once they die, but they're manageable. They're incredibly slow, but don't even get me started in the Shrieker Zombies. I hate the Shrieker Zombies so much because they blind you. They aren't that hard to take out, but they are fast and they will blind you with every fiber of their being. And in a map that's already very, on a map that you already don't have a lot of space in, the Shriekers are just way too annoying for me to have any semblance of liking this map, which is why I think it's a bad map. The baby gun's really good. I didn't mind the monkeys too much, and the story was perfectly fine, but everything else about this map is very... And also, I already talked about the traps, but oh my god, that one trap with the mud is so inconsistent. I hate it so much. It is such an inconsistent thing. And overall, that is why I think Shangri-La is a bad map. And next up, oh my goodness, Moon. Moon is one of two things to you. Either, Moon is, in everybody's tier list, Moon is either here or here, with little to no in between. You either think it's one of the greatest maps of all time, or you think it's one of the worst. And if you're like me, you think Moon is an absolute piece of crap map. Everything about Moon, in my opinion, is terrible. And I will admit, there are a few things about Moon that are good. The story behind Moon is perfectly fine. That is all cool. But as a person who doesn't care much about the story in a game where I'm there to have fun, Moon does not provide that fun for me. You spawn in the Area 51, and the very first thing you see once you spawn in is a perk machine dropping. And what do you see? It alternates between Jug or Speed Cola before picking one of those two. And that is the very first issue. Jug and Speed Cola are both perks that spawn at Area 51, but only one of them spawns in at a time. If you want to pick up the other perk, you have to go through the entirety of the moon to go back to the teleporter, which sends you back to Area 51, where there will be a chance that that perk will spawn in. And if you don't get the perk you want, then you have to wait an entire other round before you can go back to the teleporter. The Cosmonaut, I will admit, he's not that big a threat late game when you're, if you're like me, if you train in the spot that I train in. I train right next to the teleporter outside the dome. He's not that big a worry because you can very easily sense him coming. But the fact that if he grabs you, he will teleport you to a random part of the map, make you red screen, and steal one of your perks is horrible. I hate that design. And my absolute least favorite thing about Moon, I don't even care that much. Actually, there are two more things I have to talk about, but I don't even care that much about the low gravity. I think it's fine, but it's the excavators. The excavators are the most inconsistent piece of craps you ever seen in your entire life. And as a person who has no freaking idea how people are anything good with the hacker, I absolutely hate the excavators. The hacker as well. Please tell me why on earth you can only carry the hacker or the PES suit and not both. Please explain that to me. It makes no sense. Why is it that in order to pick up a tiny little device that's actually smaller than the size of your smartphones, you can't hold that you have to take off your spacesuit before you can hold it? Why is that a thing? Why do they both take up the same inventory slot? It makes no sense. Moon, I hate you. You deserve to be an F. Next up, we have Transit. And by all means, Transit should be here. By all means, Transit should be here. But I am putting it in bad. Yes, it is objectively speaking, Transit is the worst map of all time. I will admit that. Transit, objectively speaking, is in fact the worst map of all time. But unlike something with Moon, you can hop on a game of Transit and have a good time. You really can. It is possible, not so much in solo, but it is possible with a group of friends to hop into a game of Transit and actually have a blast. And that, honestly, is a credit to the map, because everything else about this map is horrible. The fog is horrible, the denizens are horrible. I personally hate the Avogadro. I don't like how you have to only damage him with melee attacks, and he will two-shot you. I believe he deals like 150 damage, if I'm not mistaken, with his shock ability, his lightning bolt ability. Obviously, the Pack-a-Punch process is the worst out of any Pack-a-Punch process that has ever been in any Zombies game ever. It is horrible. The Jet Gun is the worst wonder weapon of all time. Everything about it is horrible. But that one thing where you genuinely can get into a game of Transit and have a great time. It is possible, but objectively speaking, this map is horrible. I will admit, but the only reason I'm not putting it painful is because I actually enjoy Transit. I can hop into a game of Transit. I can even hop into a game of Transit on solo and have a good time. Next up, we are going to be ranking these survival maps. Because they do sort of exist and people sort of count them as their own map. So first off, Bus Depot. I look at these maps are sort of more difficult to rank because they're there to just act as fun survival maps. Bus Depot is nothing, and that's even said in game. I can't remember the exact verbiage they use for this map's description, but it's something like this is a masochist dream world or something like that, because you have no Pack-a-Punch, you have no perks, you have a single mystery box location, and like a few wall weapons. That is all Bus Depot provides. It's supposed to be a very challenging map, and in fact, it is a very challenging map. I personally actually enjoy Bus Depot. It's not one of my favorite maps by any means. Like, not even close. Like, I'm actually going to put it in bad. Just because it wasn't like that. When it comes down to survival maps, it doesn't offer anything. And when we're getting to this point where we're expecting a lot more from maps, yes, this map wasn't going for anything like best map of all time. It was literally supposed to be solely a survival map. That was it. And it accomplished that, but just the lack of things, you pick up, you hit the box till you get the weapons you want, and then you're training. Or if you're like me, you camp on this map and then die in round 15 because you don't have a perk. And in a 2-hit down system like Black Ops 2 had, this map is difficult and overall not very fun. But, I mean, it wasn't really going for best map of all time, so I guess bad is a good placement for it. I don't really know. Farm as well is a very difficult one to rank, because Farm, honestly, I'm going to put Farm in bad. I think Farm, out of all three of these, Bus Depot, Farm, and Town, I think Farm is the worst out of all of them. Because Farm had perks, whereas Bus Depot didn't have perks. But the one thing that Farm didn't have, the one thing that Farm failed to do that Town successfully did, was Farm didn't really feel like a good space for a survival map. Bus Depot, like, you go into Bus Depot, you know what you're getting into. There's nothing there. Farm, they could have done the exact same thing. Yes, it would have been a little bit, like, unoriginal and not fun there. But Farm was, like, the middle ground, where it had perks, but no Pack-a-Punch. Bus Depot didn't have either. Town had both. And overall, I felt like Farm just didn't really hold up in that regard. Just because I felt like the spacing was a little awkward. For a survival map, and overall just wasn't a very good space. Farm is a very barren area in the normal Transit anyway. It's probably the most forgettable area out of every single area that's in the entirety of Transit. So no one really remembers this map, probably. And it's just overall a very lackluster map, and I personally think it's a very bad survival map. And then we hit Town, which was the culmination of everything you pretty much wanted in a survival map. Because the difference between Bus Depot and Farm is that Town had a moving mystery box. It had not too many doors to open, but it had a decent bit of doors to open. It had 6 perks. It had Pack-a-Punch. And it was overall just a very fun experience because it had like good spacing and everything. It felt like a very, very fun and very, very good survival map. And for that, I'm putting it in average because it's not like for survival maps, you can't really rank survival maps that high because the survival maps are never really going for best map of all time. And Town at the same time was not going for that. But the fact that it managed to like, this is like your, I can't remember the word for it, but this is like your go-to survival map. If you want to make a survival map, look at what Town did and culminate off that. Because Town is what you want in a survival map. Everything about it was great for just a fun survival map. And then we have the fourth survival map of the entire game, and that was Nuketown. Very similarly to Bus Depot Farm and Town, it was just a survival map, wasn't going for best map of all time or anything, and it takes a fan favorite Nuketown and puts it into a zombies format. I will admit one thing about Nuketown that's different from the rest. Nuketown Zombies did have a slight story to it. And that story goes as deep as this. Nuketown takes place at the exact same time as Moon, and you can hear Richtofen speaking on the Moon in this map as he's doing the Easter egg. And it's a really cool thing that the moment you hit round 25, I think is what it is, or the moment he says his last thing, the zombies' eyes turn from yellow to blue, indicating that Samantha is no longer in control of the zombies, and is instead Richtofen now in control of the zombies. Overall, the map is average. It's pretty much the exact same as Town. Nuketown did a really good thing, very similar to Town, because the difference between Nuketown and Town is that Nuketown had random perk spawn, which I personally enjoyed. It had a bit of a story, but you could predict when the perks would come. You just couldn't predict where they would come. You had a new gun in the M27. You had Pack-a-Punch. You had the 4 original perks. It was overall a really good time, and I can still hop into a game of Nuketown Zombies. I did it recently, actually. I played a game of Nuketown Zombies, and I had a great time. I didn't last that long. I think I died at like round 7 because I was playing stupidly. But Nuketown, overall, very good survival map. It's very same thing that I said about Town. If you are looking to culminate, if you're looking to make a survival map, take what Town and Nuketown did. Take what they did and build off that. If you're trying to make a survival map rather than a story-based map. Next up, we have Die Rise. This is going to be the most controversial pick, I think, in the entire list. Die Rise is very similar to Moon, where either you love it or you hate it. And I think if you were to ask people this question like 2 to 3 years ago, like, do you think Die Rise is a good map? You would get like an even mix of yes, it's a good map, and no, it's a bad map. Nowadays, I think more people are leaning toward Die Rise being a bad map. And yes, there are a lot of issues with Die Rise, but personally, I thought Die Rise was a good map. In fact, I actually, at one point, because I like to do a lot of like top 10 lists when it comes to zombies maps, and I might do one in the future, but I felt like Die Rise was, at one point in my life, a top 10 zombies map. And that is the most controversial thing you're ever going to hear in your entire life. But I really enjoyed Die Rise because I never really had a whole lot of trouble with the fall damage aspect of the map. I enjoyed the Sliquify. I thought it was a really cool wonder weapon. I enjoyed the verticality of the map. I thought it like basically added a little bit to it. And yes, the random perk spawn wasn't the greatest thing of all time in Die Rise, but I felt like overall Die Rise was fine. I really enjoy Die Rise. I do. I genuinely enjoy Die Rise. But I can completely understand any argument thrown against it. Like, I at times actually tend to binge watch Tim Hansen's map analysis series. And once he gets to Die Rise, he constantly talks about how Die Rise is his least favorite map of all time. And every single point that he makes in that video, or most of the points he makes in that video, I completely get, and I completely understand where he's coming from. But it's so weird to see this map be the exact, like, it's so weird how Moon and Die Rise are the exact same thing. Either they're great or they're bad, and there's like no in between. So I have Die Rise at good. Finally, for the very first time, guys, we have done it. We have reached a map that is worthy of S tier. Mob of the Dead is the greatest map of all time. It is not my favorite map of all time. I will admit, not my favorite, but it is by far the greatest map of all time. So many things were done in this map that were absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to go over all of them because there's a lot to go over. But let's just like briefly summarize everything that was great about this map. The characters, the story, the atmosphere, the location, the pack-a-punch process, the fact that every time you go to pack-a-punch, you're living the entire story. You're completing the plan that these mobsters have set out before them. By completing the plan, you are literally, by going to Pack-a-Punch, you are literally completing the plan that these mobsters have gone through. It is an incredible thing for this map to accomplish. The Blundergat is an incredible map. Brutus, although a very annoying boss zombie, is a very fair boss zombie. The Electric Cherry was a great perk to be introduced here, and overall, the map encourages you to explore the entire thing. It was so good. Everything about this map was great, and I have it at S. If you have this map at anything other than S, I have to question why. If it's just based off personal preference, it's like what maps I prefer over others, I can understand. But if we're speaking objectively, which is what I'm trying to do in this video, I'm trying to speak as objectively as I possibly can, I feel like you have to say Mob the Dead is a near perfect map. Because you're never going to get a perfect map, okay? S is near perfect because you're never going to get a perfect map. But Mob the Dead came as close to perfect as you could probably get in a Zombies map ever. It's probably never going to be topped. Other than that, we're going to have Buried. And by the way, this stream, we're going to have a string of maps right here, right? Where we're just going to be ranking some of the best maps of all time. Buried by itself is A. You could probably even make an argument for Buried being S, but in terms of the Victus storyline, Buried was the best out of all of them. And the difference between Buried compared to Die Rise in Transit is that Buried did not starve you of resources, and it did not waste your time, and it didn't starve you of resources as you were doing things. Transit and Die Rise both have the issue of taking too long to make things happen. And after you ride on the bus for like the 5th time, you start getting bored. After you're waiting for 5 minutes for your perk to come up to the rooftop, you start to get bored. Buried does not waste any time with you. The entirety of Buried is set at your own pace, and the one thing that Buried does so well is that it gives you so many resources early on. The chalk system, giving you 1,000 points every time you draw on the wall. What is it? The ability to give a man booze and he charges down and breaks down a barricade and you get more points, up to like 3,000 points the further away you do it. An incredible thing for this map to be able to do. It is such a good map. Everything, I would not say it's near perfect because the map is very, very, very easy. It is an incredibly easy map because there's so much training ground, and you have a bunch of overpowered buildables that are infinite damage. I believe at least they're infinite damage and can do so much. You have the Ray Gun Mark II, which, sure, it's not the greatest wonder weapon of all time, but it's still very helpful at least to getting early round stuff going. But it is such a good map, and everything about it is great. Next up, we have Origins, my personal favorite map of all time. And yeah, I mean, listen, I have to put my personal favorite map of all time in Near Perfect. I feel like I have to. Origins was a masterpiece. It really, really was. So many things about this map were great. I absolutely adored the Wonder Weapons. The Wonder Weapons were fantastic. The ability, there was so much exploration, so many things to do, and you had a ton of time basically to do them, because the game did not punish you for like taking your time. If that sounds weird at all, that's something that like Transit fails, and Die Rise even somewhat fails to do, is that it sort of punishes you for taking your time. But the difference between Origins and Die Rise is that Origins, you're always doing something. Die Rise and Transit, when you take your time a lot of the times, you're basically in Origins and Die Rise, when you're taking your time, you're basically waiting for something to happen. Whereas Origins, you're not really waiting. The only thing you might be waiting for is the robots to come. And just, there's so much to do. There are a crap ton of parts in this map, but it's overall not that bad because they all have their own, like, they all have their own, like, niches. Like the lightning staff parts, they're all the exact same thing. You have to ride the tank, jump off at a certain point, and you get yourself a lightning staff part. All the wind staff parts are in one in each robot. All the ice staff parts, you dig while it's snowing at every single location. All the fire staff parts, you do specific things around the map, and you get it. Like, you turn on the generator 6, you get a part. You defeat the panzer, you get a part. You shoot down the fire plane, you get a part. Like, it's just all of that, and they're all, and everything is spaced out evenly. Like, there is not one section of the map that feels more important than the rest. It is overall, the layout of this map is great. Pretty much everything about this map is just fantastic. And I give Treyarch mad props for having Origins be as good a map as it was. Next we move on to BO3 though. It was a bit of a long wait. It was 3 years apart. Typically it's only 2 years apart between Zombies games, but obviously with Sledgehammer finally getting the okay for Advanced Warfare, you had to wait 3 years rather than 2 years to get another masterpiece in Shadows of Evil. Shadows of Evil is the culmination of what a Zombies map should be. Every single area of this map has the exact same things in it. Quite literally, you cannot look at any area of the map and say that it has one thing over anything else. Each area has a perk, it has a part for Pack-a-Punch, it has a ritual area, it has a area to call in the Civil Protector. It has a fuse for the Civil Protector. Each one has a shield part. Everything about this map is so evenly spaced. It is fantastic. The Margwa is the greatest boss of all time. No, actually, I personally think it's the Panzer. I think the Margwa is the second greatest boss of all time because it doesn't punish you for you can like train it with your zombies for a bit, and it's not too big a threat early on, and it gives you so many points when you kill it. That is the one thing about it. It gives you so many points. It doesn't strip you of resources, and similarly to Buried, it gives you so many resources. There are so many things to do on this map, and the only part about this map I'd say might need a little bit of improving is the fact that there isn't too much space. But honestly, that's a bit of a credit to the map. Shadows of Evil is not that difficult a map because of like all the overpowered crap you have. Obviously, you have overpowered Gobblegum, you have the Apothecan's Servant, you have the sword, and it's all very manageable. But the lack of space on this map is what makes it a perfect map. If this map actually had more space, it'd probably be one of the easiest maps of all time, and people would treat it the same way they treat Ascension. But the fact that there actually is such little space is why this map is so good. It gives you all this overpowered stuff because the map without the overpowered stuff would be one of the hardest maps of all time. And like, imagine trying to defeat the Margwa in as tiny spaces as this map has without the Apothecan's Servant, or without the Apothecan's Sword, or without the little Arnies or anything like that. It's all just like, it's all so perfect, and this is the culmination of a perfect map. Like, everything in this map, I still would not say it's perfect, because again, as I said, you can't have a perfect map. The Apothecans, but like everything about this map, there is so much good with so much bad, and it balances it out so beautifully to make just such a masterpiece of a map. And everything about Shadows of Evil is great. It is the one issue, by the way, with this map is this was a launch map. This should not whatsoever have been a launch map. This was a terrible map to launch with the game because it's such a complicated map, so it doesn't draw in new players. That was the issue with this map. It was so complicated that it just didn't draw new players into it. It didn't do a good enough job at teaching you the new mechanics, and that is the only reason this map is not a perfect map. It was a launch map that should not have been a launch map. That is basically the only reason. We then have the Giant, which, honestly, I'm going to be entirely honest, this is basically just Deriz Part 2. There were barely any difference with it. You had the Annihilator quest. There was a story to the Giant, which was a slight difference between that and Deriz. Deriz Doris obviously had a story, but it wasn't really told in the map. It was mostly told in like I think there were books on the game. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought there were books and comics on COD Zombies. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But the story of Doris was basically like it was a facility used for all of Group 935's experiments and all that. The Giant was pretty much a continuation of that, but through the Black Ops 3, the Ether, through the Primus crew storyline. They're basically the exact same map, though. There's not much different to talk about, so it's good because I put Doris good. There you go. There's your answer. Derize and Jock, and this is those are the four. I feel like just like 10 minutes ago I was talking about Mob of the Dead, and that was the very first one to put an S. We now have 4 in S. Keep that in mind. When it comes down to original maps, we had Mob of the Dead, then Buried, then Origins, then Shadows of Evil, then Derize and Jock. That is the great 5 in Zombies, right? That 5 streak is just the greatest thing ever, and Derize and Jock does not disappoint, because here's the thing. If Derize and Jock was the launch map and Shadows of Evil was DLC 1, Black Ops 3 early on would have been received so much better. Because Derize and Jock is the perfect blend of casual and advanced game. Because the casual players can come in, you open up to turn on power. What do? You open up 4 doors and flip a switch. What do you do to get Pack-a-Punch? You press 2 buttons and you get Pack-a-Punch spawned into the map. It's as simple as that, and that's the bare necessities. If you want to go advanced, all right, fill up the 3 dragon heads around the map, pick up the Wrath of the Ancients, and if you want to, you can upgrade it. Highly advised upgrading. Each of those upgrades is pretty much as good as all the rest. Some people would say the lightning bow is better than others. Personally, I would say the fire bow is the best out of all of them. But all of them have their own unique effect, and they can very much all be used together. And overall, it's just a really good experience. The perfect blend of casual gameplay and veteran gameplay is mixed into this map. And it's overall a great experience, a great story, by far the best Easter egg in the entire game, okay? Not in terms of story, but in terms of the steps you need to do the Easter egg. It is a perfect Easter egg. So well made. I love the Easter egg from this map. It is perfect. Now we get into Zetsubo no Shima, and this is where the streak of those 5 maps ended. We have Mob, Buried, Origins, Shadows of Evil, Derize and Jock. Great. How can they mess it up? Well, they did it with Zetsubo no Shima, okay? Here's the thing about Zetsubo no Shima, right? I once heard Zombies YouTuber Tim Hansen. Well, I don't think he's a Zombies YouTuber anymore. I think he uploaded his last Zombies video today, actually, which is sad. But he said when he was doing his map analysis series, he said Zetsubo no Shima was a beauty in disguise. And I'm just going to say I don't see it that way, but I completely understand where he's coming from. Why is Zetsubo no Shima so bad? Horrible boss, horrible setup process, and you know what? I'm just going to place it there. Zetsubo no Shima, in my personal opinion, is the worst Zombies map of all time. Okay? And here's my reasoning behind it. This map strips you of every sort of resource that you would need. To turn on power requires, I want to say, over 7,000 points, and for you to require a lockdown event. During that time, what you are more than likely it's probably going to take you until round 7 for you to turn on power. And up until then, you will not be able to get Jug opened up, right? You won't be able to get Jug until then. So you're limping around at a 3-hit down. And throughout that entire thing, if you at any point go down, guess what? It's game over. But let's say, hey, okay, you do get the power on. It was horrible, but you did it. You got it on. What do you do now? Well, you have a list of, I want to say, 16, or if you count the skulls, 20 different parts for you to pick up around the map. And the bad part about it is that every single one of those items feels required for you to pick up. And that is the one thing that previous maps that did so well, that's that not everything on the map felt required. Zetsubo no Shima, everything on the map feels required for you to do. Those challenges that should be optional, they feel required. the shield, the gas mask, the KT4, they all feel required. And just everything about this map was so poorly made, in my opinion, that it is by far the worst zombies map of all time. I will, however, forgive them for making such a god-awful map in Zetsubo because they immediately followed it up with GK. GK, for the longest time, I was indifferent about this map. I didn't know whether or not it was good or bad, and after trying to hit round 30 and after playing it a whole boatload more recently, which I've just been having a ton of fun on GK, I can very easily say that this is a great map. And I will be entirely honest, I am very tempted to throw it into near perfect, but I'm not going to. I'm going to throw it in great because it does have one issue with it that Mob of the Dead, Origins, Shadows of Evil, and Horizon Shock, none of them have. But I'll get into the good, then I'll talk about that one issue. So, GK. What's good about it? You have very straightforward pack-a-punch process. You have literally to go from Zetsubo to GK. Zetsubo had what I said, 20 parts or something. GK has 3 shield parts, the three network controllers. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but the 3 pack-a-punch parts basically, and that's it. You have that, and then if you want to count the Dragon Egg as a 7th part, that's it. That is all you have. The shield parts are placed in obvious parts of the map. There's one pretty much in the spawn room. There's one right next to the power room, and I can't remember off the top of my head what the last part is, but that doesn't really matter. The shield parts are very easy to come by. The pack-a-punch process encourages you to explore the entirety of the map. The only one issue I have with it is the fact that the specialist of the map, which I can't, the Gauntlet of Siegfried, I believe is what it's called. It's a really fun and very good specialist weapon, but it requires you to wait a long time. A lot of that is waiting for, you just have to pass rounds, which is very simple to understand, but it's overall kind of boring. The Ray Gun Mark III is also only accessible through the box. There is no free Ray Gun Mark III in GK. So it incentivizes you hitting the box, which for the longest time was not really that big a necessity. You pretty much just got a wall weapon. In Black Ops 3 especially, you pretty much, all you did was get the wall weapon, get a wall weapon, double pack it, and get the free, do the quest to get the free, what is it called? Wonder weapon. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. But in my opinion, the only issue with this map is honestly just the sheer difficulty that you have at a higher round. And maybe that's just a personal thing, but modern wonder weapons to me should be able to carry you through those higher up rounds. And Grog Crovey did not do that. The Ray Gun Mark III craps out in damage at around, I want to say like around 40-ish. It is not good by then. It will no longer one-shot zombies and all that. But overall, other than that one thing, if the Ray Gun Mark III was just a little bit better, I would put this map in near perfect. But great is still a very good placement. I would say this is probably the 5th best map of all time. Next up, Revelations. A map where they tried to use nostalgia to get us to like the map. And early on, when the map first launched, I guess that sort of helped. It was cool, but once the more you start to play it, the more you really realize just how much of Revelations was completely just copy and pasted from previous games. There are what, 2? I want to say 2, it might be 3 unique areas around the map, because you have what, the spawn area is a unique area. The Apothecon is inside the Apothecon is a unique area. Other than that, nothing else off the top of my head is really all that unique, because every other area of this map is just a previous map. That is all Revelations was. It was pretty much just reused assets. What about the wonder weapons? Well, you had the Apothecon Servant from Shadows, and you had the Thunder Gun. What about the specialist? You had the Ragnarok DG4 from Drop. Nothing about this map was innovative. They tried to play this map as safely as possible by just not innovating whatsoever, and that is what really prevents it from being anywhere above average. I don't think it's lackluster, because the map is fun, and it can prove to be the map can prove to be fun at times, but just the lack of innovation prevents me from being able to put this map any higher. Then we get into BO4. And we start the game, and we got a very, very bad map. No, just no to Voyage of Despair. I'll be honest, I actually have not played it too much recently, but what is the issue with Voyage of Despair? Well, this is more of a Black Ops 4 issue, so every single map, I think, is going to suffer from this, but the boss zombies were atrocious. I hated the Blightfather more than anything else, honestly. The Catalyst zombies were also really bad, but I hated the Blightfather so much. The boss zombies there were too many of them. The map layout was terrible. The Titanic was a cool idea for a map, but doesn't really fit well into a zombies environment, which is really what forced Voyage of Despair to be as bad a map as it was. It wasn't really that interesting. It was also the very first map in the Chaos storyline, and that was really, overall, just not very intriguing. No one really cared much about the Chaos storyline, which is why I had 4 maps and it was dealt with entirely. I just think Voyage of Despair is a really, really poorly made map. Next up, we have 9, and 9 is one of the only maps in Black Ops 4 that I can genuinely say was actually pretty good because of how good the layout of this map was. It was such an incredible layout for a map. You had 4 corners, each one dedicated to a single god, and similarly to Shadows of Evil, not a single corner felt better than any of the other corners. Not every single section of the map felt like it had a purpose, and they all served their purposes. If you ever went down on 9, you would go to any of the god statues, pick up your perks, maybe pick up a new gun or a pack-a-punch, and then you would basically just train out once you were ready. Train out in the middle area of the map and make just pretty much all of those. Just train. It was basically just that. The layout was fantastic. The boss zombies were still very annoying, and that's really the main reason it's not near perfect, because the boss zombies were really bad. I can't remember the wonder weapon. I want to say it was the Death of Orion was the name of it, or the Circuit's Kiss, or something like that. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. Overall, this map was a very, very good map. This map was a very average map with a fantastic layout. That is how I think I'm going to summarize this map. Very average with a fantastic layout, which bumps it up from average to great. Next up is Blood of the Dead, the Mob of the Dead remake, and I will admit, sure, not as good as the original, not even close to as good as the original. And there are a lot of things about this map that I completely understand why people don't like it, but it's similarly to me in Die Rise. I just personally kind of thought Blood of the Dead was a fun map. I won't say it's a good map because I understand all the criticisms that you could levy toward Blood of the Dead, and I understand why you would place it lower. I understand why you place it higher. So I'm just gonna place it dead smack in the middle. There wasn't too much innovation with the map, and overall, a lot of the map that was quote unquote supposed to improve Mob of the Dead actually, ironically, made it worse, because you had the spawn area of the map, which overall pretty much had like no purpose at all. There's a perk and a Hellhound head, and that was basically it. And the Hellhound head you didn't even really need at all, because the Hellhounds, similarly to Mob, gave you the Hell's Retriever, which in Black Ops 4 takes up your equipment slot, and Wraithfires, I believe, deal infinite damage. So there was no point in taking the Hell's Retriever, because you had a much better option in equipment that you already spawned into the map with. So it didn't really matter. I just still think it was pretty much just Mob of the Dead version 2, just not nearly as good as the original Mob of the Dead. So, average. We then have Classified, which has to be one of my least played Zombies maps all time. From what I've heard, it's basically just 5 improved. So I'll give it good. I do know about the map, honestly. Like, I do understand, like, you have like the new areas in the spawn room. You have the new Pack-a-Punch Pack-a-Punch area at Area 51, which is pretty cool. And they also had an improved Winter's Howl. They had a lot of areas in the map that made sense. A lot of like brand new areas that made sense. And actually improved with the spacing in the map. So Classified, I would say, is a better version of 5. So that's why I'm ranking it 1 higher than 5. We then have Dead of the Night, which is another map which I honestly probably have not given a fair shot. I haven't played Dead of the Night too much, but from what I did play of Dead of the Night when I actually was playing Black Ops 4, I think I can safely say Dead of the Night was a horrendous map. Again, I can't really remember too much about it. And maybe me ranking it there is a little bit too like biased or just like not good because of the fact that I have basically not played too much of the map. So maybe I should be just not ranking it, but from what I remember, this map was horrible. The Nosferatus, the werewolves, incredibly annoying boss zombies that are just the worst things in the world. I've seen that the Alistair's Folly is not really that good a wonder weapon, although obviously not like a horrible wonder weapon, just sort of an average wonder weapon. The map layout was horrible in my opinion. It was incredibly large, and it pretty much didn't really matter. It was large for the sake of being large, and I understand like it's a mansion, so it should be big, but I feel like it didn't really work out. And obviously the one major issue with this map is the fact that the lack of a trailer on release. There was no trailer. There may have been like a gameplay trailer like one day before this map released. A little bit of a cut. I got a bit interrupted, but all good. I can't remember exactly what I was saying, but I believe I was on the layout of the map. The layout of the map, I just didn't really feel like fit that well into a zombies map, and that was the main downside of it. It just didn't really feel like a zombies map, I guess, with just how big the layout was. I don't really know. It's just maybe it's just the fact that I haven't played it as good, but from what I did play, I hated this map every single second of it. I really thought it was terrible, but maybe it's just a lack of me not really having played it that much. One map I did get a very good chance though to play a lot of was Ancient Evil. Ancient Evil, I'll be entirely honest, it's been a long time since I played it, but I do remember I had pretty much just done what everybody else had done. They'd pretty much left BO4 by the time Ancient Evil had come out, so there wasn't really much to talk about with the map. No one was really talking about it, and I didn't really understand whether or not it was a good map or a bad map. I just probably would have assumed it was a bad map because Black Ops 4 was just a horrible game. But with my challenge to try to get to round 30 on every single zombies map, I had to play Ancient Evil, and I've constantly been hearing that it's not nearly as bad as people were saying. And I got a chance to play it, and I could very easily say that Ancient Evil is a top 10 zombies map of all time. Oh my god, this is by far the greatest Black Ops 4 zombies map. I could even see an argument for this map to be top 5. The layout of the map was incredible. The wonder weapons were a ton of fun to use. And yes, the Blightfather and the Catalyst zombies came in to ruin the entire thing. But the Giganese was not nearly that bad. The Giganese was sort of like the Margwa, just a little bit worse because it had like it was not clear when he spawned in, and he had a range attack or something. The bosses weren't that bad overall, but everything else about this map was perfect. The map layout was great. The wonder weapons were great. The story of the map, although again not really that interesting, was, from what I can understand, pretty good. The Pack-a-Punch process was very simple, and you had fast travel systems to get between the two areas in the map incredibly quickly. And the challenge system as well was an incredible thing as well. The challenges provided a ton of replayability because you could just keep doing the challenge. The challenges in this map were basically the trials from Cold War Zombies. That's basically what they were, and they were just incredible assets in the map that helped out with replayability purposes. And overall, Ancient Evil, fantastic map, and it should get more credit despite it being in Black Ops 4. Next up, we're talking about Alpha Omega and Nacht der Untoten, okay? I'm talking about them both at the same time because I haven't really played either all that often. So I'm going to be ranking them together because I'm going to be replacing both of them in average. From what I've seen, these maps are in fact average. I know for a fact Alpha Omega is average because Alpha Omega did basically what Revelations did. They didn't innovate in any area at all. There was no innovation done. There were a few changes, right? So like you had the Nova 6 crawlers, but they were lightning variants. You had the Hellhounds, but lightning variants. You had the Raygun Mark II that had 4 elemental upgrades. It was another Nuketown recreation. You had Mount Rushmore, which is pretty much the exact same thing as Sophia from Grad Krovi. A lot of things in that map were pretty much just reused assets. The Avogadro made a return, Nuketown made a return, Raygun Mark II, Nova Crawlers, Hellhounds, all of that, and it was overall just a horrible experience in terms of innovation specifically. And Nacht der Untoten, I will admit, I think I've only played Nacht der Untoten like once or twice, but from what I've seen, it's basically just the exact same thing. It's pretty much Call of the Dead, but it's like pretty much just Call of the Dead, but worse, and not very innovative. So both of them are going to be placed right here in the average because A, lack of prep, and 2, lack of times played, and B, pretty much just what I've heard. Into Cold War. I have put a lot of hours in Cold War, okay? A lot of hours in the Cold War Zombies. First up, Die Maschine. Die Maschine, at this current moment in time, I will say, is a... okay, hang on real quick. Good or average? I really got to think about that. So, I understand the one downfall that every single Cold War Zombies map faltered was the map locations were unoriginal. Every single one of them was unoriginal. Okay? Die Maschine was unoriginal because it was just a Nacht der Untoten remake. Firebase Z, Nacht der Untoten, Forsaken, and Outbreak were all... Firebase Z, Nacht der Untoten, and Forsaken were... All three of those maps were taken directly out of the campaign, and Outbreak was taken directly from multiplayer with the... I can't remember the name of the game mode, but that huge, like, Warzone-esque game mode where there were like 10 teams of 4 and each team had to try to get as much uranium as they possibly could. Very weird game mode, but all of those maps got put into Outbreak basically, and there was nothing really about Outbreak that was pretty much cool at any point. So overall, very lackluster for Outbreak, Firebase Z, Nacht der Untoten, Forsaken, and even Die Maschine if you're being just a Nacht der Untoten remake. The thing about Die Maschine is that it does not feel like Nacht der Untoten at all. It might have a very similar layout. It might have Nacht der Untoten placed into it, but it doesn't feel like it. When you're playing Die Maschine, you do not feel like you're playing Nacht der Untoten. You feel like you're playing Die Maschine. And everything else about the map was actually pretty good. The Megaton was a really good boss zombie. A fantastic boss zombie. The DIE machine was a really innovative wonder weapon. Well, I guess not innovative, but it was a very fun wonder weapon that overall kind of craps out in damage at a very early round, so not the greatest. And a lot of Die Maschine, I have to give Die Maschine a good. Just because it was the first map in a brand new game and introduced so many different things that made everything just a ton better. So I have to give credit where credit's due. Next up, we got Firebase Z. And I'm just going to be entirely honest right here. Firebase Z, I have to admit, was my least favorite of all of the Cold War maps. I will admit, for camo grinding, this map was my playground. It really was, because one of the camo challenges was you had to kill special or elite enemies, and Firebase Z was plentiful of them. It was incredible. But if you were to put Firebase Z as a comparison to Nacht der Untoten or Forsaken or even Team Machine for that matter, I think you sort of have to put Firebase Z as the worst of them all. Where did that go? Why are you there? Okay. Firebase Z, again, not a bad map. None of the Cold War maps were bad, but Firebase Z lacked pretty much anything. You turn on power, you got the Ray K, you got the you turn on power, you got the Ray K, you got the you got all your perks, and then you're pretty much set up right from there. The issue I had with Firebase Z is the fact that they did not implement the ray gun onto it. And the reason I find that to be not cool is because the ray gun is on every single map on this list, right? Every single map on this list thus far, except for the 4 Chaos Story maps in 9, Ancient Evil, Voyage of Despair, and Dead of the Night. And for whatever reason, Firebase Z was not added into Firebase Z. It was added into Team Machine. It was added into Outbreak. It was added into Nacht der Untoten. It was added into Forsaken. But for some godforsaken reason, they did not put it in Firebase Z. I don't know why, but they didn't. Also, the tower defense rounds were very much not good, in my opinion. I didn't enjoy the tower defense rounds. They weren't very good. And overall, the map was just very lackluster. The moment you get, and this was an issue I had with a lot of Cold War, was that it was so easy to set up that you were starting to train the zombies at like round 10. But Firebase Z had the worst setup, in my opinion. It had the worst setup process out of them all. The Ray K was not that hard to get at all. It was the worst out of them all. I felt like D Machine had the best setup process because it actually incentivized you doing a lot and getting all the elemental upgrades. Whereas Firebase Z, what did you have? You had the Ray K. That wasn't even very good to begin with. It did get buffed later on, I will admit, but it wasn't when it was first released, it wasn't very good to begin with, and overall still isn't really all that good. Probably the worst wonder weapon second worst wonder weapon. DIE Machine's got to be the worst wonder weapon in that game, but worst setup process and overall most annoying boss zombies, I guess you could say, because the new Hellhounds are very annoying. They blow up the moment they get to you. The Mimics I like the Mimics, but I can find them being very annoying. And the Manglers, they are very easy to deal with. I'm not even really considering them. And that was basically Firebase Z to me. We then moved into Outbreak. I was tempted coming into this video to not even rank Outbreak because I constantly say Outbreak is not a map. Outbreak is a game mode. It is not a zombies map. It is a zombies game mode. And if you're ranking zombies game modes that are not the original, Outbreak would be number 1. It would be number 1 by a long shot. Like you can't rank anything higher than that. And Outbreak isn't. But since everyone pretty much considers Outbreak to be basically a map rather than a game mode, except for me, I'm gonna rank it here. And where do I put Outbreak? I'm gonna ignore the fact that Treyarch put so much effort into making Outbreak basically as good, basically shoving all the resources into Outbreak when everyone pretty much just wanted another round-based map. They were pretty much doing only Outbreak content until I want to say it was Season 4, Season 5. And keep in mind, Firebase Z came out in Season 1. Season 1 Reloaded is when Firebase Z came out. Outbreak came out in Season 2, and that was the only other zombies content we had for the next 4 months. I'm going to just ignore that because I don't want to rank it based off that. I want to rank it based off what it is. And what it is, it's not the same as any other zombies map, and I would prefer to play a zombies map over Outbreak. I'm trying this. Here's how I'm going to rank Outbreak. I'm going to go through all the maps from worst to best. I'm going to say whether or not I would rather play Outbreak over that map. So, Dead of the Night, everything in Painful, yes. Everything in Bad, yes. And I would rather play Firebase Z. Yeah. No, I'd rather play Outbreak over Firebase Z, but I'd rather play like Revelations, Blood of the Dead, Town. I'd rather play all of them over Outbreak. So I'm gonna place Outbreak in average. I think that's actually a pretty good placement for it. It wasn't really to my liking as a whole on game mode, but I understand the appeal to Outbreak. It's like an open world experience that just was kind of cool, a pretty cool open world experience. But just to my liking, it wasn't round based, and I prefer round based over literally anything else. I prefer a long setup process, and I prefer to go ahead and start training. That's my go-to map. Long setup process and a way to go. And that's one issue that Cold War had. They didn't really have a long setup process, and I understand why they don't go for a full-on like long setup process anymore, because they're trying to rope in all the new players. But I really wish they gave the veterans something to look forward to, rather than just trying to constantly bring in new players, because the new players are going to eventually get bored and they're going to stop playing if you just constantly make it new player-friendly content. You got to do what Horizon Drop did. Okay? Treyarch, just do what Horizon Drop did. And then for the remaining maps, Nacht der Untoten, Forsaken, I'm placing them both in average, because to me, the one issue that I had with Cold War Zombies is that every map felt like the exact same thing. I will completely admit, every single map felt like it was the exact same thing. Because you pretty much did the exact same thing. You spawned in, you stayed in like the spawn room, or at least this is how I played. I stayed into the spawn room until like round 7. Then I went ahead, I opened up every single door in the map. I pack-a-punched my weapon. I tried to get the Wonder Weapon. I got the Wonder Weapon. I pack-a-punched the Wonder Weapon, and then I start training. That's basically how every single one of those maps played. So they're pretty much all the exact same, but none of them are bad. None of them are very good. So they're all just average. There you go. There's your analysis for Black Ops Cold War Zombies. And yes, I will be ranking the Vanguard maps. Duran Fong and Terra Maledicta. You might think I'm weird for saying Daron Fong, but that's how they pronounced it in the trailer, so that's the way I'm gonna pronounce it, because that's the official way that it's pronounced. Daron Fang, I understand why you would say that, but Daron Fong is how they pronounced it in the trailer, so that's how I'm gonna pronounce it. Screw all of you. These are basically the exact same map. Okay, I'm gonna admit they're pretty much the entirety Cold War. They're pretty much the exact same map. I'm hoping Numa can hopefully shed some light into Call of Duty Vanguard Zombies. And I will be the first to say, okay, I do not think Vanguard Zombies is as bad as people are saying. I'm not playing it because I would prefer to play other zombies, but I don't think Vanguard Zombies is as bad as people are saying. Like, if you talk about the overall gameplay of it, ignore any bugs or anything like that. Ignore the fact that you would rather have a round-based map. Just ignore all of that and look at the map for what it is. I don't think it's that bad. You spawn in, you get 1 of 3 objectives. You go to that specific objective, you complete it, and you open up another section of the map. You have a pretty interesting perk upgrade ability that you can do, which is something that I wish Cold War did, where you upgraded your perks in game rather than before the game loaded, because I wasn't a huge fan of that from Cold War, where you got a bunch of Ethereum crystals and you use those Ethereum crystals to beef up your arsenal before you went through the game. I would have preferred if you got like you could use salvage in game to beef up your arsenal in game. Like, everything was started at tier 1, but then you could eventually upgrade it to tier 4 while you're in the game. Because that would have given it game progression. That's something I have to give these two maps credit for. They do have relatively good game progression. The issue is that they tried to combine Outbreak and Round Base into one, and the issue with that is that the two things are so separate, they're so different, that when you try to combine it into one, you get this mesh of just something that's not, like, it doesn't feel right. And that's what they did with these, and it just didn't feel right. I honestly think these have good gameplay progression. You progress with them very, very well. Arguably some of the best game progression I've seen out of a COD Zombies game. The only one I'd say would probably have better game progression would be Extinction from Ghosts. But that's a completely different thing that we're not ranking on this. So but in terms of progression, these were really good in terms of progression. It's just once you hit like round 7, that progression abruptly stops because you're not opening up any more of the map, and you only get one thing. You only get one thing to do. You get a single whatever you said. Get a single objective. You don't even get to choose your objective anymore, and that's where it really all starts to fall downhill, and you start getting bored because you're doing the exact same thing over and over again, and the progression's gone, and you just get bored and you quit. So that's where these really that's where these really fall, and I'd say they're lackluster simply for that. And yes, this is basically the tier list, right? And that, yes, what I'm saying here is that I'd rather play Daron Fong and Terra Maledicta over something like Shangri-La. I'd rather play them over Farm. I'd rather play them over Bus Depot. Rather play them over Transit. I'd rather play them over any of these 8 maps. But everything above it, I'd rather play. So that's why I haven't really been playing Vanguard, because I have all of these maps to fulfill my COD Zombies needs. But finally, that is it for the video. That is the tier list. We're not ranking any of these because, like, the Final Reich, that's World War II. Awakening, I believe that's Extinction from Ghost. Advanced Warfare, I don't care about any of these things because they're not Treyarch based, so we're not even going to bother with it. This is my Treyarch Zombies tier list. Like it if you don't like it. Like the video if you like it. Dislike it if you don't. Like, I don't care. Do whatever the frick you want to this video. Ignore it completely once you're done watching it. I don't care. That's gonna be it. But what I do have to say is, hopefully sometime in the future, I'm gonna be doing a lot more Call of Duty Zombies content. That might not last come August, but I'm going to be trying to do that. So that's going to do it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys all later. Goodbye.